Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be reading through some of my more recent creative writing pieces. This one in particular is entitled Playing God. And I do just want to say a couple of things before we get started on today's video. So first of all, I just want to say that this is just the first draft of this piece. I do want to change a few things. I do want to make it longer and yeah, just a few other changes to make. This is only the first draft. And secondly, I just want to say as well that this piece is quite violent. It is themed around murder. So if you don't like any of that sort of stuff, please do not listen to this. I don't want to offend anyone or upset anyone, bother anyone with this stuff. I just want to share my writing pieces. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. It's only a short story, so it's not going to be too long. Playing God by Danielle Jameson. Dear Diary, today I did something I know is wrong, but I hope that those who read this will understand why I did it. I am not a naturally violent person, but I believe that the law was going to fail me and let this man roam free. Please hear my cries of help and accept that although I have no guilt for what I have done, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think it was necessary. Now with that said, please let me explain what has just happened. My chainsaw purred as I debated my life choices. I had my doubts about doing this, but I knew that I had to. I had to put an end to all of this upset and drama. I had undertaken my preparatory research and was ready to complete my mission. I revved up my chainsaw and gazed upon my shaking hands, which felt sweaty and somewhat unstable. I was locked away in the family garage and it was the dead of night. My mum was spending the night with her new lover over at his house and was completely oblivious to what was going on in her own home. This is it, I whispered to myself. Months of planning, preparing, hunting, hurting. This ends now. I turned to my victim, who was sitting on the floor with a bag over his head, nervously shivering with fright. I had taken away all of his sensory abilities. His sight was blinded by the bag over his head, his hearing was impaired by sound-cancelling headphones placed over his ears, and I had left him with his own mind for quite some time, whilst I got myself ready for the bloodshed that would commence. Now you may be thinking to yourselves, why on earth would I go this far? And what had this so-called gentleman done in order to deserve the ending of his life? Well, that is a long story, and is not relevant right now. All I know is I have to take the law into my own hands. I glanced at my watch and noticed the time. I had to do this now, or else I would have screwed myself over big time. My mother would be back before I'd even know it, and I knew that she was eagle-eyed enough to notice what was going on, and I'd get a scolding. No way was I going to let this monster walk free. So I proceeded to remove the bag from his head and the earphones from his ears, and immediately he knew who I was. Last time we had engaged in conversation, I was the one who was vulnerable and weak, and he was the one who did all the talking. This time I knew it would be different. I had stuck some tape over his mouth so that no one would hear the screams of his distress and pain. He had no control anymore, and he was overwhelmed. I kneeled down in front of him and ensured I got right into his personal space. I wanted a little chat with him before the doom. Well, hello. Bet you didn't think you'd see me again, I said with a demonic grin on my face and a growl in my voice. I bet you already know why you're here. He shook his head with arrogant denial and grunted through the tape. Don't lie to me. Of course you know why you're here. You tied me up, took away my dignity in the harshest of ways, and left me to cry myself to sleep for countless nights. You will pay for what you did to me, I can promise you that. There is no fate worse than death. I gave my chainsaw one last rev, and that was it, before I had a chance to second-guess myself. I sliced off his arms and legs, and then proceeded to slice off his head with an almighty roar from the chainsaw. That was it. I had killed a man. His heart had stopped beating and his body looked almost unrecognisable. After I stared at what was left of his body, I took his body outside and burned him alongside his clothes and other possessions. I made sure to clean up well after myself. I made sure that this would never, ever come back to haunt me. This part of my life was done. All the torment, all of the nightmares. This was over after months and months of so much anger and pain. When everything was cleaned up, I was so tired and decided my brain and body needed a rest. So I laid down in my bed and I slept incredibly and unusually well. I never had an inch of guilt in my bones, and I never thought of him or what I had done. For as far as I was concerned, he deserved it. He paid for the crime he committed by sacrificing his life. Authorities never found anything linking to James's case, and it has since been put on hold. I had seen his parents speak on television begging for their beloved son to return home, but that was something that was, of course, never going to happen. I have rid the world of one less monster, and that is how I, Katie Holmes, got away with murder. I then raised my head above my old battered bright pink diary, which I held tightly within my grasp, and glared across the courtroom, which was filled with people with clear mixed emotions on the situation. When my eyes met with the judge's, tears began to drop down my cheeks, and I knew exactly what he was going to say. "Miss Katie Holmes," the judge announced, "although the court understands to some extent your actions, you intentionally took James Rockfield's life, and the court today has ruled that you are guilty of the murder of Mr. Rockfield 10 years ago, almost to this day. Miss Holmes, we have tried to take into account the deeply disturbing and disgraceful act Mr. Rockfield did to you when coming up with an adequate sentence. However, you have shown no remorse for your actions. You also failed to notify the relevant authorities for almost 10 years. Therefore, the court rules that you will be sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, you could be given the chance of parole no less than 5 years into your sentence, if, and only if, you display good behaviour. Miss Holmes, I encourage you to use this time wisely, to think about your actions and to grow and learn from this experience." My heart seemed to fall into my gut as my head lowered to look at the floor. By this point, I was not only speechless but devastated that the court was sending me to jail, although it was no surprise to me. This must just be how life goes sometimes. I set out with good intentions, but ultimately made things worse for myself and my child, 10-year-old Alice, who was born out of my horrific encounter with James that night. As police began to lead me away, I glanced to my right, and in the stands I saw her crying for her mum, crying for me. She screamed out my name, and I managed to shout out to her a quick, "I love you, sweetie, don't worry about mummy," before I was taken away to begin my life, a new and different life, behind bars. So that's the end of Playing God. Like I said, it is only a short story, and of course it is only the first draft, so a few things might change, but that's the basic premise of this short story. I very much hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave this video a big thumbs up. If you're new here, make sure to click on that subscribe button. If you wish to share my work at all, that is fine, but just credit me, please. That's all I ask. If you do want to check out any of my other creative writing pieces, the link to the playlist will be put in the description box down below for you. So go and check it out if you want to. And I very much hope to see you in my next video.